everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Happy Payday Friday to everybody that's out there. I hope that you guys have a great weekend. We are in the final stretch, but the toughest stretch of being fans of the NFL, because training camp is only a week away from teeing off, but this is the toughest stretch of the offseason to survive, because the season, you can feel it. You can taste it on the tip of your tongue. It's just around the corner, but yet you're still struggling to make it through. And you know you're in a really hard time of the offseason when the biggest news right now is Patrick Mahomes being fat and Najee Harris injuring his eye doing fireworks on 4th of July. So that's how you know we're in the toughest stretch of the offseason right now. But if you want to find a way to quench your thirst for NFL football, check out Season 2 of Quarterback on Netflix. It's a documentary series that follows 3 quarterbacks throughout the previous season and basically gives you a in-depth and up-close look at what life is as a starting quarterback in the NFL. And I recently just got done watching Season 2, where they follow Jared Goff, Joe Burrow, and Kirk Cousins' journey throughout the 2024 season. And I want to give you guys my thoughts on all 3 of these guys. We're going to save Kirk Cousins for last because he had a lot going on in this thing. But watching Jared Goff on this, I really like this guy now. I didn't really know that Jared Goff was as likable as what he came off in this. And the way that the Rams shipped him off in Detroit was really wrong. Essentially, as soon as the season ended 5 years ago, Sean McVay a few weeks later calls Jared Goff out of nowhere. And Jared Goff isn't really expecting to hear from Sean McVay. And then as soon as he picks up the phone, you got Sean McVay saying, "Hey, Jared, we appreciate everything that you did for us. We're trading you to the Detroit Lions." And Jared Goff is like, huh? What? How you doing? What? Where did this come from? So just out of left field, Jared Goff gets blindsided by the Rams. They ship him off to the Detroit Lions for Matthew Stafford. And essentially, Sean McVay was just so done with Jared Goff that he pretty much treated him like trash. He disposed of him. He didn't want anything to do with him. And the way this trade came off is essentially that the Rams sent Jared Goff to Detroit for his career to die. Let's just be honest about it. And for Jared Goff at that moment, he was very devastated, understandably slow. Because it's not like he was playing completely bad football. That was really the worst season that he had up to that point in his career. But ever since that Super Bowl loss to the Patriots, Sean McVay started to sour over time on Jared Goff. So when he gets Matthew Stafford, immediately they win the Super Bowl. And of course, Jared Goff feels a little bit more like shit than what he already did. And it was so bad that Sean McVay initially ended up, over time, reaching back out to Jared Goff and apologizing for how they went about the trade. Because, yes, it is a business, and you have to separate the person from the player. No matter how much you like a guy, when it's time to move on, it's time to move on. But the way the Rams did it was a little bit unprofessional. They pretty much didn't give him no heads up, no alert that this was going on. It's just all of a sudden out of nowhere, Jared Goff gets that phone call from Sean McVay. It's 30 seconds long, and McVay essentially says, "We're shipping you off to Detroit because Matthew Stafford is better than you." But it was heartwarming to hear how Dan Campbell and the Lions general manager Brad Holmes wanted Jared Goff in. It meant a lot to him at that point, because this essentially is the low point of Jared Goff's career. And for Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes to say to Jared, "Hey, we want you. We just didn't get you because we had no choice but to get you, but we really believe that you can be the guy to help right the ship in Detroit. And playing for the Lions means everything to Jared Goff. When he was describing the emotions that he felt with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes opening up their arms to him, he nearly broke down. Playing for the Lions means everything to Jared Goff. This is the city that was willing to take him in when the Rams felt like he wasn't good anymore. And you know what they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And Jared Goff might have been trash to Sean McVay at that point, but he was treasure in the eyes of Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes. And ever since Jared Goff has been in Detroit, he's played some of the best football of his career. He's been an MVP candidate for the past 2 seasons. He's led the Lions to the playoffs for 2 straight years in a row, and he continues to put up outstanding numbers. And Matthew Stafford, he's been really good with the Rams. He all of a sudden has now become one of the premier quarterbacks in the league after being underrated for the entirety of his tenure in Detroit. This is one of the rare trades that you see when there isn't a loser. Both trades or both teams ended up benefiting greatly from this trade. So Jared Goff on Netflix season 2 of quarterback is easily the most likable guy on this thing. He recently got married. He's just hard not to root for. Joe Burrow just has so much aura on this thing, and let's get on him because Joe Burrow, one thing about him is that he's not a super vocal guy as what you may expect him to be, because normally your quarterback is the guy that everybody's looking for leadership. They normally are the guys that are giving those raw motivational pregame speeches. But Joe Burrow is kind of the opposite from that. He's not a guy that has a in-your-face leadership style. He more is a guy that is going to keep his composure. He's going to be cool, calm, and collected. But there are moments when Joe Burrow will let you know how he feels if he is getting to that point where he feels the team isn't playing up the standards. And there were so many games that the Bengals lost last year with Joe Burrow playing outstanding football, but yet the team just lacking from an execution standpoint and the defense not being able to do their job. And it was just a season when it felt like even when Joe Burrow got a win, he still lost. Because after the Bengals beat the Dallas Cowboys, a big win, one that they needed at that time, and they kind of got lucky with how they won that game with their punt being blocked, Dallas being unable to recover it, and it somehow was recovered by a Cincinnati Bengals player. So that was a game that they walked away stealing, which is, you know, how the majority of the Bengals games went last year. So that was a big time win in prime time. As soon as Joe Burrow gets to the locker room, he checks his iPhone and he gets alerted that somebody broke into his house. And he's just like, oh my God, man, I can't get a win for nothing. And even when I do get a win, I still take a loss in the end. And Joe Burrow is a really private guy. So when he felt like that home invasion opened him up to way more publicity than what normally comes with the position, you can kind of tell that that was the breaking point for him. That's the moment when he was like, you know, I'm just ready for this year to be over with. Joe Burrow also had an interaction with Zach Taylor after the Bengals won against the Tennessee Titans. I believe they won this game by at least 2 possessions, and yet Joe Burrow wasn't happy about the win. And Zach Taylor goes up to him and says, good job, hey, we're going to get better from this. And Joe Burrow saying, no, fuck this. It's like, this is unacceptable. They had like 8 false start penalties. They had guys that just were having self-inflicted errors. And Joe Burrow is a perfectionist. And all the quarterbacks in this show are perfectionists. But Joe Burrow is one that he really cares a lot about getting the small things right. He's somebody that pays attention to the small details. And with Zach Taylor basically coming up to him saying, hey, bro, it's okay. Like, we'll worry about it later. Let's just enjoy the win. Joe Burrow is like, no, there's a difference between winning and there's a difference between winning against the Tennessee Titans, because if we play this way against any of the better teams in the league, we end up losing. And essentially that interaction shows you why the Bengals season went the way that it did, because Zach Taylor is more so of a guy that tries to find the positives and the dark spot. And Joe Burrow is one of those guys that he just sees things for what they are. And what he saw from the Bengals last year was a team that wasn't really that well prepared in big, crucial moments, and a team that was undisciplined and routinely found ways to beat themselves. And that game really encapsulated the frustration that he felt throughout the season. Then you got Zach Taylor saying, well, I'm still going to congratulate our defense. No, what does the defense need to be congratulated for? They haven't done deadly squat all season long. And that interaction alone shows me everything that I need to know about what's going to happen this season with the Bengals. Zach Taylor is going to get fired. Obviously, Joe Burrow has been carrying this guy. Every time he gets injured, the season is over. We've seen Mike Tomlin make it to the playoffs for 2 straight seasons with quarterbacks that were on par with what Jake Browning is. And the difference between the two is that Mike Tomlin isn't a guy that's complacent. A win isn't just a win to Mike Tomlin. He's willing to call out a sloppy performance. Zach Taylor, on the other hand, he just seems to be lucky, or he just seems to be happy-go-lucky anytime the Bengals win a game, and that doesn't fly with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow also, off the field, is a really intriguing cat. He's just one of those guys that, he's like Joe Rogan. He's curious about everything. He likes the piano. He likes nature. He's a history junkie. He's playing video games as well on Mondays. He's just into a bunch of different things. And I just hated to watch the entirety of this thing and just see Joe Burrow continuously get let down despite him just balling out of this world. And he's really tough also. He got absolutely splattered in one game that the Bengals played at the end of the season against the Steelers. He got destroyed by Cam Hayward, I believe that it was. And he thought that his neck and jaw was broken. I was like, oh my goodness, Joe Burrow, you just got destroyed. And that moment alone made me glad that my football career didn't go as far as what it did, because I couldn't last a single snap in the NFL with the level of violence and physicality that's played at that level. It's just something that the average human being wouldn't be able to suffer through, because it's a car accident happening every play. And somehow, some way, Joe Burrow, despite getting face planted after, was able to walk up and shake it off. And I was just like, damn, Joe Burrow, you're a gladiator. But Joe Burrow has a lot of aura. He's very likable too. There's nothing about him that, after watching this, didn't make me like him any more than what I already did. And we got a little bit of the behind the scenes with his relationship with Ja'Marr Chase. He has a good relationship with everybody on the team. He invites everybody over different weeks. They hang out. But Ja'Marr Chase essentially is his best friend. He caught his first collegiate touchdown at LSU. Not only are they best friends, but both of their families are really close as well. So it makes sense why Joe Burrow wanted to get Ja'Marr Chase extended. Same thing with T. Higgins. Now, Kirk Cousins. We saved the best for last. Kirk Cousins on season 2 of Quarterback on Netflix. He came off really whiny. And in the first season of this thing, he came off really likable. But seeing him this go around made me not really care about him all that much. And Falcons quarterbacks in general just don't need to be on this show, because it's just bad karma for them. Every time they're on it, they always get benched. And Kirk Cousins, he gave a little bit of insight to why he picked Atlanta. It wasn't that he was chasing the money. It's that he wanted to play for Minnesota, but he was promised a longer-term commitment with the Falcons, and the Vikings weren't willing to give it to him, and they also wanted to sign him on a short-term deal. So Kirk Cousins basically went to Atlanta because they promised him that he will get a little bit more stability playing for them than what he would have gotten in Minnesota, when in all actuality, the same fate that he would have suffered in Minnesota with them taking a quarterback in the first round, he suffered in Atlanta, and that's why he felt misled. He felt like this was going to be his job. He wasn't going to have anybody that was going to pose a threat to him, but he wasn't as healthy as what the Atlanta Falcons thought. So Kirk Cousins is trying to play victim and say that the Falcons misled him when he misled Atlanta, because they thought that this dude was going to be 100% fully recovered from his Achilles injury, and he still had it lingering going into his first start against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And with this injury, it made the Falcons feel a little bit uncomfortable and unsure about him being able to sustain a high level of play for at least 2-3 years. So that is another reason that prompted them to go ahead and shock us all when they selected Michael Penix 8th overall last year. And Kirk Cousins, you could tell that him not being fully recovered from that Achilles injury was hurting the offense, because there were certain things that they couldn't call because he wasn't able to drive the football like he needed to. And then he had some more injuries that piled on top of that. He had an ankle injury that he was playing through. And when he started to find his groove and he finally started to get more comfortable in the offense, he had a elbow injury that he suffered against the Saints when a guy just came helmet first into his elbow. And from that point, that's when everything completely started to spiral for Kirk Cousins, along with the Atlanta Falcons season. And with Kirk Cousins obviously knowing that he wasn't healthy enough to put the team in the best position to win, he decided to be selfish and not tell the team that he wasn't fully healthy. And he ended up not doing this because of a book that he read from Drew Brees that said that you should never give your backup quarterback any opportunity to see the field. So Kirk Cousins essentially threw away the Atlanta Falcons' chances of winning the NFC South along with their playoff hopes, because he was scared that if he had to miss some time due to injuries, Michael Penix would come and play so well that he wouldn't see the field ever again. And I think that this shows two things. One, that Michael Penix is going to be an absolute beast, because if Kirk Cousins felt this way to the point where he didn't want to let the team know because he knew Michael Penix probably could run away with the job and he never start again, Michael Penix must have been absolutely crushing it in practice. So if you're a Falcons fan, you should feel really good about Michael Penix after watching this thing, but you also should feel incredibly frustrated because your season got jeopardized because of Kirk Cousins' selfishness. And the logic never made sense to me, because the Falcons gave Kirk Cousins a bunch of money in free agency to come play. So if the guy wasn't healthy, if he would have told them that, I doubt that they wouldn't have inserted him over Michael Penix again when he was fully healthy, because of the financial commitment that they made to him. And with them still wanting to play the long game with Michael Penix, they only benched Kirk Cousins because eventually they noticed that he wasn't healthy enough. He was trying to warrior himself through this injury, but it just was jeopardizing the team's performance. And that's when Raheem Morris ultimately made the call. And props off to Raheem Morris for being patient with Kirk Cousins, because if I was him, I would have been benched that dude after that game against the Denver Broncos. And what really made me turned off to Kirk Cousins watching this is that he learned from Peyton Manning to send voicemails to the head coaches. And I get that sending a voicemail to the head coach occasionally is a good thing. If you want to be up to snuff with things, if you want some analysis on a game that didn't go right, that's understandable. But sending voicemails to Raheem Morris after you continue to stink it up and say, I got to play better, I'm not playing as good as what I should be. Instead of wasting time sending voicemails, just play better. If I was Raheem Morris, I would text him, dude, stop telling me that you're going to play better and just play better. You don't need to tell me that you're not playing as good as what you should be. We obviously can see that from the play on the field, Kirk. We got access to the All-22. We're watching these games in their full entirety on the sidelines. We know you're not playing well. You don't got to tell us this. And I like Kirk as a person off the field. I love his family. I was a little bit hurt to see his wife break down the way that she did after they got the news that he got benched, because one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is how these families have to see the criticism that their loved ones get from playing this game. And the criticism, the noise for Kirk Cousins to get benched grew so loud that the wife just had to completely go ghost from her social media pages. And after that Raiders game, when she started seeing more and more of the bench Kirk Cousins posts, she eventually asked him, hey, do you think they're going to bench you? And that's when Kirk Cousins had to come to the reality and say, yeah, there is a good chance that they probably do bench me. And eventually when it happened, you know, he was heard about it. He had an hour-long conversation with Raheem Morris in person, and he knew that that probably was the end of his career as a starter. But I do admire the fact that he took it upon himself to call Michael Penix, and he was professional about it. And that's something that you have to give Kirk Cousins for. In a league that's full of guys that have big egos and personalities, like what we saw with Marcus Mariota when he last was on this show, when he got benched for Desmond Ridder, the dude completely went ghost, and he was a poor sport about it. He made excuses for it. He felt as if he was wrong. Kirk Cousins did the complete opposite. Even he knew that, you know, he deserved to get benched. And although it did hurt him a little bit, he took it on the chin and he was professional about it. He's getting paid to do a job, and he eventually said that I'm going to be the best backup quarterback in the NFL. He ended up having his best practice ever of the entire season. So I just was really turned off by Kirk Cousins. Just came off a little bit too whiny for me. If I was Raheem Morris, I'd be like, dude, you're doing the absolute most. Don't call me after 3 bad weeks of football, dude. Just play better. Like, what? But yeah, this is my thoughts on season 2 of Quarterback on Netflix. If you haven't seen it already and you're in dire need of some NFL football in your life, I encourage you to check this show out. And if you haven't seen season 1, go ahead and watch that one as well. They also have a wide receiver version as well that they did last year. But I hope that they continue this thing for another season. I would love to see Lamar Jackson on it. Maybe get a rookie quarterback in there like Cam Ward. But I just like documentaries because they give you an up-close person look of things that you normally wouldn't be able to get access to on a normal day-to-day basis. Lamar Jackson is the closest thing that we will ever see to a perfect quarterback in the NFL. He can throw the ball like Tom Brady, and he can run that thing like he's prime Barry Sanders. He is clearly the most talented quarterback to ever put his hands on the football. But if you tell an old head this, they'll think that it's 2004, and they'll say that Michael Vick is the most talented quarterback ever. And the fact that Lamar Jackson continues to get compared to Michael Vick is outrageous because Michael Vick was nowhere near the talent that Lamar Jackson is. Lamar is 4th all time and career passer rating, 4th all time in NFL history in that department. Michael Vick has a career completion percentage of 56%. Lamar completes 64% of his passes throughout this point in his career. And Michael Vick has never thrown more than 21 touchdowns in a season when Lamar is going 41-4 touchdown to interceptions. Aaron Rodgers is the closest thing to what Lamar Jackson is. He essentially is Aaron Rodgers on crack because he's putting up Aaron Rodgers levels of efficiency. To throw 41 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions is something that we only have seen prime Aaron Rodgers pull off. Michael Vick was nowhere near the passer that Lamar Jackson is. Lamar Jackson surpassed Michael Vick in his 2nd season when he won his first ever MVP. Michael Vick is a legend. I'm not making this segment to take anything away from what Michael Vick was for his time and for his era. But what I am saying is that it's no longer 2004 and 2005. It's 2025. And you are being incredibly biased if you are going to try to justify Michael Vick being more talented than Lamar when the numbers say otherwise. And you're being a little bit disingenuous because Lamar is a 2-time MVP, a 3-time first-team All-Pro. Those are accolades that Michael Vick never had. And if you watch the film, it's pretty obvious that Lamar Jackson, by far, not only is more talented than what Michael Vick ever was, but he's the most talented quarterback that the NFL has ever seen. This is what you would get if you are creating a quarterback in Madden and you maxed out his stats with 99 everything, 99 speed, 99 throw power, 99 accuracy. That essentially is what Lamar Jackson is. Lamar Jackson, when he has started a full season, has never won less than 11 games. He only has lost 2 times to the NFC Conference. Michael Vick was nowhere as dominant as what Lamar Jackson has been. And even Michael Vick has came out and said several times that Lamar Jackson is a way better player than what he ever was. But when you talk to folks that grew up watching football as a kid and their generation, they're always going to be biased to the guys that they grew up watching. It's kind of like when you ask people who are the best rappers, what's their thoughts on music right now, they're always going to say, oh, the music that's coming out now is trash. Back in my day, boy, y'all ain't know about DMX. Y'all ain't know about Jay-Z. Boy, y'all ain't know about that old Kanye West, that college dropout Kanye West. Like, okay, we get it, Grandpa. Your generation was great. But this new generation is far better than anything that you watch growing up as a kid. And if you got 2 functioning eyes and you don't need glasses or contacts, it's not too hard to see that Lamar Jackson is more talented than what Michael Vick was. What Lamar Jackson has done in less than a decade has surpassed what Michael Vick did throughout the entirety of his 13-year career, not even included when he missed 2 years when he was incarcerated. I'm not hating on Michael Vick. I once again want to reiterate this. Michael Vick is a legend to me. He's in my Hall of Fame. He's in a bunch of people's Hall of Fames. He definitely is in the Madden Hall of Fame for sure. He definitely is one of the most gifted quarterbacks ever. But he's nowhere on par with what Lamar Jackson is. You just are being naive, or you're just being ignorant if you're going to sit here and lie and say that Michael Vick is more talented than Lamar when Lamar is slinging that football at a rate and a level of efficiency that we've never seen a dual threat quarterback be able to throw the football with. He has the 4th highest career pass rating in the history of this league right now, and he still has way more years to go. There will never be a quarterback that comes close to what Lamar Jackson is. This dude is as close to perfection as what it gets from a talent standpoint at quarterback, and eventually he will be able to put it all together and win a Super Bowl. But we got to stop comparing Lamar Jackson and Michael Vick when Lamar is in a completely different weight class than what Michael Vick was. Michael Vick was never the passer that Lamar Jackson was. His best season passing came in 2010 under Andy Reid when he had 21 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Lamar was already having those kinds of seasons as soon as he entered year 2 in the league. There's something called the theory of evolution. You know how scientists claim that we started from apes and then we evolved into what we are now as humans? Michael Vick crawled so Lamar Jackson could run. He definitely paved the way for a guy like Lamar Jackson to be what he is. And obviously Lamar Jackson was influenced by Michael Vick, by his playing style, but he also is just far better throwing the ball than what Michael Vick is. And It just is outrageous that you have a bunch of these old heads in the barbershop that want to come at you and say, man, nah, Lamar Jackson ain't better than Michael Vick. Lamar Jackson ain't better than Michael Vick. But probably Michael Vick was something. Michael Vick, when he was playing for the Falcons, boy, he was a problem. We get that. But Lamar Jackson is an even bigger problem. Lamar Jackson is as big as a problem as what stopping the tush push is. You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. Vick completing 52% of his passes in the season. Lamar Jackson never did that. Come on now. Let's give credit when credit is due. Stop living in 2004. And I need you old heads to get caught up to 20 years in the present and accept that when you watch Lamar Jackson, number 8, step on that field every Sunday, history is being made. Lamar Jackson makes history every time he plays. Literally, he breaks some kind of stat every time he's on the field. Let's admire the greatness of Michael Vick, but also admire that Lamar Jackson is in a completely different stratosphere than what Michael Vick ever was. The Cowboys are more dangerous than what people want to admit. This is a playoff team. The Cowboys should win anywhere between 9 to 12 games at best this season if everything goes right. But they're being viewed down upon because of the hiring of Brian Schottenheimer. He may be a little bit in over his head. It's a Jerry Jones, yes man kind of decision. Understandable. But let's not talk about the Dallas Cowboys and sleep on this team like they still don't have one of the best rosters in the NFL. Yes, they do go budget hunting or great value hunting in free agency, and they don't really put their best foot forward. But they do an incredible job of crushing it every year in the draft. The Cowboys are one of the best drafting teams in the National Football League. And the majority of their best players are guys that they have drafted and developed. And when you look at this Dallas Cowboys roster, top to bottom, they don't really have too many weaknesses. When Dak Prescott is fully healthy, he's a top 12 or better quarterback. You got an elite offensive line. You got one of the best wide receiver duos with the addition of George Pickens pairing up with CeeDee Lamb. You're going to have a top 10 defense with Michael Parsons being one of the 5 best pass rushers in the league. It's insane to me the amount of hate that Michael Parsons receives when the guy has had double-digit sacks every year that he's been in the NFL. And if he would have played in every game this past season, he probably would have ended up leading the league in sacks. He's one of those guys that could break the NFL's all-time sack record when it comes to sacks in a single season. He's that kind of talent. The Cowboys need to stop playing around and pay that man his money. Not only do they got Michael Parsons, but they got Dante Fowler back, and they re-signed a really good interior defensive tackle, and their secondary is really good as well. Trayvon Diggs missed a lot of time for injuries last season. He's going to be back. Deron Bland didn't start the first part of the season fully healthy. You still got Malik Hooker, who is really good. The Dallas Cowboys have one of the best rosters in the NFL still, but that seems to always be glossed over. And Brian Schottenheimer, he's not going to suck as the Cowboys' new head coach. Is he going to be good enough to get this team to a Super Bowl? Probably not. But Jerry Jones is more so the reason for why the Cowboys can't win another Super Bowl than what Brian Schottenheimer is going to be. It's not as if Brian Schottenheimer doesn't have any experience being a quality coach in this league. When he was the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets, when they went to back-to-back AFC championships with Mark Sanchez, he had the NFL's best rushing attacks during those years. And the Dallas Cowboys' biggest weakness on offense, Brian Schottenheimer specializes in, which is the ground game, which the Cowboys were one of the worst rushing teams in the league last year. This season, the ground game should be a strength because that's what Brian Schottenheimer specializes in. And if Dak Prescott can get a reliable ground game and you take the ball out of his hands and you only ask him to throw the football when need be and you get him throwing play action and he's throwing downfield bombs to George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, maybe that could be what is the factor that helps the Cowboys have a little bit more postseason success. And Brian Schottenheimer also is the son of Marty Schottenheimer, who was a really good head coach. The thing with Marty is that he just wasn't able to be some of the greatest teams of that era during his peak as a coach, but he was still a good enough one where he could rebuild your team, make you a contender. He just couldn't beat the best of the best. And Brian Schottenheimer, being the son of Marty, I think that there's a lot of potential here. And it makes sense why Jerry Jones kind of went ahead and he made this risk and he called it, "This is the biggest gamble of my career." I understand why he says that, because if Brian Schottenheimer is anywhere as good as a coach as what his dad was, then the Dallas Cowboys are going to be a force to be reckoned with. And they're not too far away from a talent standpoint to where the Philadelphia Eagles are. The Cowboys have always had really good teams. It's just the quarterback play hasn't always been up to par as what it needs to be from a guy that's getting paid the money that Dak Prescott has received. And the coaching has let them down at times. But Brian Schottenheimer is a guy that he's willing to make changes. And the guys in the locker room seem to really like this guy more than what they did to Mike McCarthy. So I think that there's too much stock being put into how bad things went for the Dallas Cowboys. When you go through the amount of injuries that the Cowboys had to go through last year, anybody's season could go the way that it did. Nobody can win when you're down the majority of your best players and you got a bunch of second string guys in. That's just kind of a tough ask. Even if Andy Reid or Prime Bill Belichick was in that situation, injuries would have gotten the best of them. Injuries can deplete a really good team. But what people do is they try to use the past to predict what the future is going to be. And football isn't predicated off what happens the previous season. What the Cowboys do this season is ultimately going to be what decides how far this team is going to go. And this should be a team that should be at least a playoff contender at worst. At their best, they're as good as anybody. They can compete for it all. You never know. But this is a team that is being incredibly slept on. You don't really hear that about the Cowboys a lot. Normally, they are incredibly overhyped by their fan base every offseason. But if there ever was a year to be high on the Dallas Cowboys, it definitely is this one, with the low expectations that they seem to have entering this season. The Buccaneers hold the record for the most consecutive NFC South titles. They have won this division for 4 straight seasons in a row. The last 3 have come with Todd Bowles as head coach. But I feel like the Buccaneers' recent NFC South titles have been by luck, because last year, the Atlanta Falcons were in firm control of this division until Kirk Cousins wanted to be selfish and jeopardized the Falcons' season and their chances of holding on to this division by being selfish and trying to play through an injury that he had no business trying to play through, and ultimately threw away the NFC South title to Todd Bowles. If Kirk Cousins would have played better football, or if he never gotten injured, the Falcons would have won this division with ease. And also, the Buccaneers have benefited from this division being terrible for the past 3 seasons. The Falcons, the Saints, and the Panthers have all somewhat been in rebuild mode. This year, though, you're going into an NFC South that is as competitive as what it's been in half a decade. Yeah, the Saints are going to be a non-factor, but the Panthers could surprise us this year. The Falcons are not too far away in terms of talent from where the Buccaneers currently are. They have drafted really well. And if Michael Penix takes a step up in development, the Falcons could easily win this division this year, now that the defense is going to be improved and you won't have a quarterback gifting you presents like what Kirk Cousins did when he handed Todd Bowles his 3rd straight NFC South title. The Buccaneers also are going to have their third offensive coordinator in 3 years. And it's incredibly hard for a defensive-minded coach in Todd Bowles to strike gold on 3 straight offensive coordinators. Liam Cohen and Dave Canales, you can make the argument that these 2 guys have carried Todd Bowles because his defenses have not been that good recently. He got shredded in the playoffs by Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, a rookie quarterback, essentially was looking like he was throwing routes against air on Todd Bowles' defense. It doesn't matter how many guys you got injured, how young your team is. If you're a defensive-minded coach, your defense shouldn't be looking as bad as what it did against a rookie quarterback. And the Buccaneers also had the worst possession in the NFL, and the Buccaneers last year also had the worst record in the NFL in one-possession games at 2-6. This franchise has peaked under Todd Bowles. They are not going to win this division again. We saw what happens when the Buccaneers go up against a team in the NFC South that is up to the same level of talent that what they have, that has just about equal, if not better, coaching than what they do. They end up struggling, which is why Raheem Morris mopped the floor with Todd Bowles twice last year with Kirk Cousins. So this season, there's just way too much competition this go-around for the Buccaneers to be able to overcome a new offensive coordinator for a 3rd consecutive season, along with them already being down their best player on the team and Tristan Wirfs, who's going to miss the first part of the season due to a injury that he had to recently get surgery on. So your offensive line is going to take a step back. Your play calling is probably going to take a step back as well, because defensive-minded coaches, they struggle to get the offense right. So when a guy is able to hire 2 head coaches to call plays for him for 2 straight years, it's hard to ask him to do that for a 3rd straight time. I don't see the Buccaneers winning the NFC South this year, and they've been able to dominate this division the way they have because of how easy it's been with them having a more superior roster than everybody else. This reminds me of when Bill O'Brien was dominating the AFC South for the years that he had prime D-Hop, J.J. Watt, and Deshaun Watson. But as soon as they got to the playoffs, they wouldn't get nowhere further than the divisional round until eventually the average, below average coaching got exposed. And that's what's taking place with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They got a great roster. The coaching is average, and that's why the Buccaneers won't be able to win this division as easily as what they have in years past, because the Panthers are catching up. The Falcons have already caught up to you, and if they can get better quarterback play, they'll end up being the ones winning this division and snapping the Buccaneers streak of consecutive NFC South titles. You cannot always judge a team for what they look like on paper, and the Buccaneers are the prime example of that. Looking at this team on paper, they look like an easy pick to win this division, but if you look at the bigger picture, what they've done against quality teams, being unable to win one-possession games, you cannot trust Todd Bowles and his coaching staff against an improved Carolina Panthers and Atlanta Falcons squads. The Buccaneers' luck winning the NFC South has run out. We're going into another season where the Chargers are being slept on because it's this misconception that they don't have a bunch of weapons for Justin Herbert to throw the football to. They got Ladd McConkey and who else? Mike Williams, he's washed. Quentin Johnston, he has butterfingers for hands and he's a bust. You're right to say those things, but the weapon that everybody claims the Chargers don't have, they actually do have, because they stole them in the second round of this past year's NFL draft. That being rookie wide receiver Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. This guy was an absolute monster last season for the Rebels. He was averaging over 100 yards per game. He was a second-team All-American. And I've talked to a bunch of my homeboys that play college football, and they all say that Trey Harris was the best receiver in the SEC last year, and it wasn't even close. He has great ball skills. He does a great job of positioning himself to win jump balls, and he just makes a bunch of ridiculous catches. He's like a younger, more athletic version of Mike Williams. And speaking of Mike Williams, Trey Harris should easily be able to beat him out for that number 2 wide receiver job during training camp. And Trey Harris is your prototypical Jim Harbaugh receiver. He's 6'2", 204 pounds, very physical, but he also is very nimble after the catch as well. And Jim Harbaugh doesn't need a bunch of elite wide receivers to compete for a Super Bowl. When he was winning with the 49ers and he went to 3 straight NFC championships and a Super Bowl in his first 4 years with San Fran, his best wideout was Michael Crabtree, and his second best weapon was Vernon Davis. Jim Harbaugh is all about running the football down your throat until he grounds and pounds you into submission. But when he does throw the football, he has 2 very good options for Justin Herbert to sling that rock to. We know what Lat McConkey is capable of. He's going to eventually become one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. I was telling you guys last year how good Lat McConkey was going to be, and I'm telling you once again that the Chargers have another stud rookie wideout that's going to have a really good first season in this offense. With Trey Harris, he's going to be your prototypical X-receiver. If you want to play press coverage on Trey Harris, good luck. You're going to have a difficult time getting this brother behind the line of scrimmage because he's one of those wide receivers that when you press him and he ends up beating you, you're going to get torched for a 50, 60-yard touchdown. And with Greg Roman liking to use a lot of play action, it votes well for Trey Harris' skill set. Now, the knocks against Trey Harris is that he does have some durability concerns. He got beat up with injuries during his 2 seasons at Ole Miss. He doesn't have the best route running in the world, but Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman don't need for Trey Harris to run routes like he's Justin Jefferson. All they need this brother to do is just go downfield and be able to win those contested catch situations. He also is going to be a really good red zone target in this offense as well. And I also forgot to add that he's a really good blocker in the run game, which is something that you have to have the ability to do at a high level if you want to play on a Jim football or on a Jim Harbaugh offense. Trey Harris is the Chargers' weapon that nobody wants to know about because nobody wants to take the time and researching how good this dude is because they want to push the notion that the Chargers need another receiver. They made a mistake not drafting one early. No, the Chargers made the right decision drafting the Marion Hampton in the first round and drafting Trey Harris in the round after that. Do you know the round that they landed Lat McConkey in? Round 2. Do you know where they drafted Trey Harris at? Round 2. Jim Harbaugh also was looking at Trey Harris when he was in the transfer portal in his final season at Michigan. This guy has a bunch of intel on a lot of these guys that have come out of the draft recently because he recruited them out of high school or out of the transfer portal. So he's pretty familiar with Trey Harris' game, and the Chargers have done a better job of anybody than landing on a bunch of their draft picks. Hell, 2 of their better cornerbacks last year were rookies. So Trey Harris is going to be an incredible player in this Chargers offense, and he's going to have an immediate impact day one for Justin Herbert. And if you play fantasy football, you definitely want to go ahead and get you Trey Harris because I got him on all of my fantasy teams because nobody's drafting this dude because nobody knows how good he is. If anything, he's the secret weapon that the Chargers don't want to tell you about because they want to catch you by surprise. They want to allow people to think that all they have is Lat McConkey, then all the defenses can key in on double teaming him. which leaves Trey Harris with one-on-one looks. And what does Trey Harris do when he gets one-on-one coverage? He dominates. And it's not going to take too long for everybody to figure out just how good of a receiver Trey Harris is. And the Chargers offense now, they pretty much are complete. They got two really good receivers. They got a great offensive line. They got a good quarterback in Justin Herbert that's more than capable of being able to deliver a Super Bowl to LA. And they also are going to have a dominant run game. Trey Harris has solidified the Chargers offense. They have that weapon that everybody claims they're missing in Trey Harris. The Arizona Cardinals can't keep dodging the truth any longer about Kyler Murray. He's a former first overall pick, and in the 6 seasons that he's been starting for the Cardinals, he only has one winning season. And you can only fire so many coaches until eventually you get to the point when you got to start asking yourself, is Kyler Murray a franchise quarterback? Because for as talented as what he is, and he is one of the most athletically gifted quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, he is incredibly inconsistent, and he doesn't play up to the amount of talent that he has. And everybody likes to bark at Trevor Lawrence for how he's a generational disappointment, but you never really hear that same level of criticism for Kyler Murray. And with the squad that the Arizona Cardinals are going to have going into this season, a great defense, a loaded supporting cast for Kyler Murray to work with on offense, including a possible breakout season from Marvin Harrison Jr., there are no more excuses that can be made for Kyler Murray. He has to ball out this year, because if not, the Arizona Cardinals at next offseason's begin, they're going to have to start evaluating him and maybe entertain the idea of trading him away and starting over at quarterback, because Kyler Murray is too inconsistent to be labeled a franchise quarterback. For a guy that is the 10th highest paid quarterback in the league right now, making more money than Matthew Stafford, he hasn't played up to that level of play. Jonathan Gannon has proven to be a good coach. His first 2 seasons as Arizona's head coach, they've improved record-wise every year. They went from a 4-win team in year 1 under him to going 8-9 last season. And if Kyler Murray was more consistent, they probably would have been a playoff team. And the last time we saw Kyler Murray in the playoffs, he stunk it up against the Rams. Although the Rams did go on to win the Super Bowl that season, Cliff Kingsbury was the scapegoat. And Kyler Murray has gone so far into his career being able to dip and dodge criticism when the coaching isn't necessarily failing him as much as what it's made out to be. Eventually, Kyler Murray is going to have to play like a elite quarterback, because that's what you expect out of a guy that was a former first overall pick. And they also traded away Josh Rosen to land this dude. Now, getting rid of Josh Rosen was the right decision. Let's not get that twisted. But Kyler Murray just has to be way better. He has the ceiling to be as good as what Lamar, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes are, because he has the physical abilities to be an alien quarterback. Yeah, he is a midget. He's 5'10 and 207 pounds, but he has an incredibly strong arm. He's one of the best runners of the ball at the quarterback position. The only physical apparent that Lamar Jackson has right now in terms of athleticism and talent is Kyler Murray. There's nobody else that comes to being as fast as what Lamar Jackson is outside of Kyler Murray and Jaden Daniels. Kyler Murray can be doing a lot more than what he has done his first 6 seasons in the league. Drew Pretzing, I don't think he's a good offensive coordinator, but Kyler Murray, with him being a franchise quarterback, he's supposed to make an average play caller look better than what they are. And Cliff Kingsbury has done an incredible job being the offensive coordinator for the Commanders with Jaden Daniels. And if Cliff Kingsbury was able to win some games calling plays for Jaden Daniels in the playoffs, why couldn't he do the same for Kyler Murray? You got to ask yourself, was it really Cliff Kingsbury that was the issue for Arizona? Or was it Kyler Murray not playing as well as what he could have had under Cliff Kingsbury, given the success that we've seen him have with Jaden Daniels? And he more than likely will get another opportunity as a head coach next offseason during the 2026 coaching carousel, because Jaden Daniels had the greatest, most productive rookie season that we've ever seen. So if he's getting that kind of production in that offense with Jaden, why couldn't he do the same for Kyler Murray? Kyler Murray should be an MVP candidate every season. But we haven't seen him look like that. He's so frustrating to watch because one series he can make an incredible play, and then the next series he can come out and just look like he's stuck in the mud. It just makes no sense. And I've watched Kyler Murray all throughout his career from when he won the Heisman Trophy with Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. He was one of the most electrifying quarterbacks of the 2010s in college football. And in the NFL, we've seen glimpses and a few signs of brilliance out of Kyler Murray. I'm not trying to say that he sucks, but you know, he may just be a bad fit for Arizona. Maybe he would be better suited if he got traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, or let's say it doesn't work out with J.J. McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe you trade him there. Hell, maybe you trade Kyler Murray. Well, I'm not going to say you trade him to a team in the division, because if Sean McVay got his hands on Kyler Murray, oh boy. But it's just eventually you get to the point, being the Arizona Cardinals, where you got to stop cycling through coaches, and you just have to admit that maybe our coach isn't the problem. Maybe we just need a reset at quarterback. And with how loaded next year's quarterback class is going to be, if Kyler Murray doesn't deliver this year, they could easily flip him for a first-round pick, use that to trade up for a quarterback, or draft whoever is available with that pick. But Kyler Murray is on the clock now. And if he can't get Arizona to the playoffs this season, then the Cardinals are going to have to get a divorce from Kyler Murray, because the talent is just way too much for him not to be better than what he has been. And you're paying him too much money for average to below average quarterback play at times. There aren't too many games where Kyler Murray looks elite. And when he does, it makes you believe that he can continue that level of play throughout the season, but he never is able to sustain it. You can't keep dodging the truth any longer if you're Arizona. They always say that the truth will reveal itself, and it's going to reveal itself with Kyler Murray and what his future will be with this franchise this upcoming season.